Okay, good evening, everybody. I know there wasn't a class for a week, but tonight in Halacha and Tanya, so we're up to in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, is the mitzvah of Mezuzah. So we'll learn a number of laws of Mezuzah, but first I wanted to discuss a little bit about the concept of Mezuzah. The Gemara says that whoever is meticulous in the mitzvah of Mezuzah will merit to have a beautiful home. Because again, mezuzah is on the home. So if you're meticulous about the mitzvah of mezuzah, you will merit to have a beautiful home. It says in the different medrashim about the Gemaras about the mitzvah of mezuzah, he says, look how great Hashem is. Normally, when you have a king, so the king is inside the house and the guards are outside the house protecting the king. In Yiddishkeit, it's the opposite. The Jew is inside of the house, and Hashem, the king, is outside the house in the mezuzah, because the mezuzah is the Shema Yisrael, which is Hashem's name. So he says, look at greatness of Hashem, that he's protecting the Jew, unlike the regular kings, where the servants protect the king. Here the king's protecting the Jews. And the Gemara says that whoever has tefillin on their head and hand and tzitzis on his garment and mezuzah in his home is guaranteed not to sin, because he's so surrounded by mitzvahs. He has constant surrounding of mitzvahs. The Gemara tells a story, to Shami, but Antoninus, there was the Roman emperor who was a very good friend with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. His name was Antoninus. He sent Rabbi Yehuda Nasi a very, very expensive present. And he said to him, no, leave it. He said to him, send me back a very precious gift. So he sent him back a mezuzah, which, by the way, is an interesting question. Normally, you're not allowed to sell a mezuzah to a guy, but that was an exceptional case, halacha says. But anyway, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi sent him back a mezuzah. Antoninus, this Roman non-Jew, who eventually converted, they say, but he was a non-Jew. He got angry. He said, look what I sent you and look what you sent to me. So he says, are you crazy? What I did was better. He said like this, what I sent you, this beautiful, expensive present, you're going to have to hire guards to watch it. What I sent you is what protects you. So tell me, who sent the better present? And the Zohar talks about it, a lot of importance of the mitzvah of mezuzah. So anyway, and the Rebbe spoke many times when he came out with the Mezuzah campaign. The Rebbe spoke many times. A lot of aspects of Torah are likened to Mezuzah. The Gemara says, whoever has Zuzah on his door, Marichin le'yamav v'shneisav, you live long. Mezuzah is a protection, by the way, on the house. And it says, not only when you're home, but even when you're away from the home, it is also protects the person. Like the pasuk says about mezuzah, Hashem yishmar tzeischa uvayacha. Hashem will guard you going in and going out for all times. And the Gemara says that pasuk refers to the mitzvah of mezuzah. So mezuzah is a very, very important mitzvah. It has its side effects. Yet the Rambam says we're not allowed to do a mitzvah for the side benefits. We do a mitzvah because Hashem told us to do it. Okay, we're going to discuss all these dinim about mezuzah, not right now, but we're going to get into them. We're going to try to go in a systematic fashion. Okay, so it's a positive mitzvah in the Torah. The Torah says, now, what is in the mezuzah? Both portions of the Shema. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad V'ahavta and V'hayim Shemaya. Now, this is one mitzvah, so to speak. So what happens if you have only a mezuzah with one of the two Torah portions in it? You're not yotze. You're not fulfilling your obligation. Not only that, you're not allowed to add anything else in the mezuzah. In other words, the mezuzah has to be only those two portions of the Torah and nothing else. Not less and not more. Another interesting halacha is, the Torah says you need one mezuzah per doorway. Okay, we'll get into that. Not only the front door, like some people think, but actually every single door of the house needs a mezuzah. We'll discuss all the dinim when we get there. But what happens if a person put two mezuzahs on the same doorpost. Not only didn't they get a mitzvah, but they transgressed a negative commandment of adding on to mitzvahs. The Torah says one mitzvah, it doesn't mean two mitzvahs. You're not allowed to put, sometimes people think, because on a kid's bedroom, we're going to put two mezuzahs. One that the kid could reach to kiss, and the other one in the proper height to where the mezuzah really belongs. Halacha says you're not allowed to do that, because two kosher mezuzahs on the same doorway, the door side, the mezuzah as it's called, is transgressing a negative commandment. What happens if you put one on one side, one on the other side, is also questionable in halacha if you're actually transgressing a negative mitzvah in the Torah of adding on to mitzvahs. Now, what happens if there's a doubt that we'll discuss later? Again, this is going to take some time. We're going to discuss a lot of practical, it's a very practical mitzvah, applies to men and women equally. A woman has to put up a mezuzah. It's a mitzvah, but a positive mitzvah not connected to time. There's no time frame. You have a house, you need a mezuzah. Now, by the way, we mentioned this by a previous shir. The mitzvah of mezuzah doesn't mean you have to buy a house to put up a mezuzah. The mitzvah of tefillin means you have a mitzvah to buy tefillin and put on tefillin. The din of a mitzvah, like we said by tzitzis, if you have a four-cornered garment, you have to wear tzitzis. If you have a house, you need to put a mezuzah. What happens if you want to sleep on a bench, whatever? So then, halachically, there's no mitzvah that you have to buy a house to do a mezuzah. The mitzvah is, again, if you have a house, you have to put a mezuzah. Now, if a person, to show you the extent of the importance of the mezuzah, what happens if somebody doesn't have money and they can either buy tefillin or mezuzah? One of the two. They can't buy both. So the din is like this. If he can borrow somebody else's tefillin, somebody else he could borrow tefillin, not his own, but he could borrow somebody else's tefillin, then he should buy a mezuzah, because then mezuzah will have, and then he can borrow somebody else's tefillin. What happens if he lives alone? There's nobody around. He can't borrow anybody else's tefillin. Then you have to buy tefillin before mezuzah, okay? Because tefillin is holier than mezuzah. What happens if you have a choice of buying a mezuzah or lulav or esrig? Mezuzah comes first. It shows the importance of mezuzah. The mitzvah mezuzah comes first. If somebody is obligated in the mezuzah and he doesn't put it on, so then the din is he's transgressing a positive mitzvah in the Torah. That means any doorway, okay, that needs a mezuzah, it's not that you have on the front door that covers the house. Every single door, with except no bathroom, things like that, but halachically, any doorway or door in the house needs a mezuzah. Some with the bracha, some without a bracha, because there are different opinions. So if there's different opinions about certain doorways, so then the halacha is you put up a mezuzah without a bracha, but you have to put up a mezuzah. So if somebody, let's say, has 10 rooms and that need a mezuzah, and they only put up 9 mezuzahs, they're actually transgressing the positive mitzvah of the Torah. The Torah says, "A mezuzah is beisecha v'yisharecha." Even your gates, your houses, they all need mezuzahs. So, in fact, it says in halacha, what happens if you don't have a mezuzah in your present house, and you have another house that you can go to? You're not allowed to stay in your house without a mezuzah. Again, this is a very general din, but again, there's certain times you're not obligated in the mezuzah. So then you can live in the house. Okay, you're allowed to go, is another interesting din. You're allowed to go into let's say you were invited to somebody's house who's not that religious yet, but you're still allowed to go into somebody else's house, even though there's no mezuzah. In other words, the obligation of a mezuzah is on the person that owns the house or rents the house, not a person that just visits a house. So then you're allowed to go into somebody's house even though there is no mezuzah on the doorway. Now, we said before, everybody's obligated in the mezuzah, women, men, you educate children to have a mezuzah on their doorway. I'll give you an example. What happens if a kid, they used to do it more often than today. What happens if a kid built a tree house? Okay, or whatever. And it's a permanent structure. It's going to be up for more than 30 days. And it's 6 feet by 6 feet. The child, but it's the kid's place. I mean, the adults are not going up there, let's say. The kid is obligated in chinuch to put up a mezuzah. Besides the fact that probably the parents own the house, so it's still theirs, they would still need to put up a mezuzah there. But you have to educate the children that they should also be putting up a mezuzah, even though it's a room only designated for kids, look at the kids' bedroom, they have to be educated to put up a mezuzah. Now, when a mezuzah is on a doorpost, you're not allowed to do any disrespectful things in front of a mezuzah. Like, for instance, if a mezuzah is double covered, and I'll explain what double covered means because it's not so simple. Double covered means, the case of the mezuzah is only one cover. If you wrap the mezuzah in another piece of paper and then wrap it in the mezuzah, it's called double covered. That's not a problem. But if a mezuzah is only single covered, then, for instance, you're not allowed to stand naked in the room. You're not allowed to change babies' diapers in the room like that. Once in a while, even if it's covered, as long as it's covered, but I'm saying on a regular basis, you wouldn't be able to stand naked or have marital relations or things like that. So people should be careful. Now, what happens, let's say you have a bedroom door, and when you close the bedroom door, the mezuzah is on the outside. So then if you close the bedroom door, it's not a problem because the mezuzah is not inside the room. If the mezuzah is inside the room, in order to do all those things, the mezuzah would have to be double covered, meaning a paper inside the mezuzah and then the outside case. Okay, now halachically, mezuzahs need to be checked twice in 7 years. Why? Same thing with tefillin. Halachically, tefillin and mezuzahs have to be checked twice in 7 years. The Rebbe spoke many times about preferably checking the mezuzah every year, if possible. Possible to check tefillin and mezuzahs every year. Now, what happens if you have a public mezuzah, like in a shul or things like that? Then that has to be checked once every 50 years. Twice in 50 years. Not twice in 7 years, but twice in 50 years. For whatever reason it is. Even though, let's say you have 30 mezuzahs in your house, it's not enough to check 3 of them. You really have to check all the mezuzahs in the house, minimal, twice in 7 years. Now, here's another interesting din, and let me explain this din with something we just discussed in halacha during the week, a week ago. There's a rule in halacha, you go up in kedusha, but you're not allowed to go down in kedusha. To give you a simple example of that, you have hand tefillin and head tefillin. Head tefillin have 4 boxes in it. The hand tefillin is 1. Okay? So halachically, the head tefillin is holier than the hand tefillin. That's the halacha. The head tefillin is holier than the hand tefillin. So what happens if I want to take the strap from the hand tefillin and now make it usable for the head tefillin? So then I'm allowed to do that because I'm going up in kedusha. I'm going up from the hand to a higher level of the head. But what happens if I want to take the head strap that was used already for the head tefillin and make it into hand tefillin? Then I'm not allowed to, because I'm going down in kedusha versus up in kedusha. Now, what happens if somebody is not as obligated as the first one. Like a public place to a private place, or it could be, I don't know to what extent this might not be exactly this, but for instance, we'll talk more about details of that later, but let me just say this thing. A room that is 6 feet by 6 feet and has a door, needs a mezuzah with a bracha. If a room has a door frame, but no door, it's an argument in halacha if it demands a mezuzah or not. Therefore, the halacha is you must put up a mezuzah, but without a bracha. Without a bracha, because it's not as obligated as a door that has a doorway that has a door. So just to give you a practical example, let's say you have 10 rooms in your house, and you have to put up mezuzahs in all 10 rooms. Some have doors, some don't have doors, but they're doorways, so you need a mezuzah. But you only have 5 mezuzahs now, and the rest you're going to get a little bit later. What room should I put on first? The halacha is those rooms that have doors should be put the mezuzahs on first, because that's a bigger obligation according to all opinions, versus a doorway that doesn't have a door. Again, it needs a mezuzah, but you put it on without a bracha. Okay, now the mitzvah of mezuzah is on the one that lives there. That means if somebody rents you their house, okay, somebody owns an apartment building or a house, and you rent the house from somebody, and you're going to be there for more than 30 days. I mean, you're renting it for a year, 2 years, whatever. The obligation of mezuzah is on the one that lives there, not on the owner. It's what's called chayvas hador. The obligation is on the person who lives in the house, not the rentor. The one who rents the house is obligated to put the mezuzah. So it's just remember that it's their obligation, and therefore the halacha is as follows. What happens if somebody leaves? They move out. And the building is owned by a Jew, and the guy that's moving in might be Jewish. Halacha is you have to leave your mezuzahs when you leave. But you're allowed to charge the new person for the mezuzahs. What happens if he refuses to pay? Then technically you would have to leave the mezuzahs there. Now, what happens if you're moving out and it's not owned by a Jew? And most likely a non-Jew, most people in the neighborhood are not Jewish. Well, most likely a non-Jew will move into the house. Then you could take out the mezuzahs. Or another interesting loophole, so to speak, if they're going to be painting the house, let's say you're moving out, so the landlord is going to have to paint the house for the next tenant. Because they're going to paint the house and they're going to take down the mezuzahs anyway, otherwise you're going to invalidate the mezuzah. So then the din is you could take down the mezuzahs. So those are dinim, but there's another interesting halacha. What happens if somebody has, good mezuzah are very expensive today. What happens? You can buy, let's say, for argument's sake, a kosher mezuzah for $50, which is questionable, but let's say you could. And your mezuzahs are $200. And you don't want to leave $200 mezuzahs because you're moving to a new place. So halachically, you could change them for kosher mezuzahs. You could take off your big, beautiful $200 mezuzah, $250, whatever, and put up cheaper kosher mezuzahs, and that's it. At least you're taking your good mezuzah. That you're also allowed to do. Okay. Also, you're not allowed to give a mezuzah to a non-Jew. This is a very big problem, by the way. Many times, especially now with the whole Israel, non-Jews are very connected to Israel, and they supporting Israel and all that. But what happens? A non-Jew comes into a Jewish bookstore that sells mezuzahs, let's say, and they want to buy a mezuzah. So technically, even though we said before Rabbi Yosef Shusterman gave Antoninus, but he was the Roman emperor, so it's a whole different story. But technically, it says in halacha you're not allowed to give a mezuzah to a non-Jew. But if it's going to be fights or he's going to kill you, you're like in the old times, so then you're allowed to sell it to them. But you should make sure that they treat it respectfully. You know, they don't bring it into the bathroom, they don't put it on the floor, and things like that. Okay, now, which places are obligated in the mezuzah? Which rooms? Okay, so any place which you live in, so to speak, is obligated in a mezuzah, meaning if you eat there, you sleep there, or you store things there. Now, I'll give you another example. What happens if you have, let's say, a live-in housekeeper, okay, that you give them a bedroom? The thing is, it's still your mezuzah. It's your house. You're not renting to them. You're letting them sleep there. So therefore, you would still need to put up a mezuzah even on that door that a non-Jew is sleeping in. Now, somebody mentioned before, what happens if you're in a dorm room, in college, whatever it is, and you're sharing a room with a non-Jew? So a Jew and a non-Jew are partners, let's say in an apartment. So the halacha is as follows. There's an argument in that case if you need a mezuzah. So therefore the halacha is, like we said before, when there's an argument in halacha if you need a mezuzah, you put up a mezuzah without a bracha. But that's only on the communal areas. What happens if you share a dorm, let's say apartment, with a non-Jew, but you have your own room, you have your own bedroom, they have their own bedroom, and then you have communal areas. So on your bedroom door, you have to put up a mezuzah with a bracha. It's your obligation. It's not a partnership with the non-Jew. It's your... I don't get your question. Well, let's leave it like that. Well, 1 second. So the rooms that are communal property, because it's shared with a Jew and non-Jew, so then you have to put up a mezuzah without a bracha. But your room, you would need a mezuzah with a bracha. The guy's room that he's sleeping in by himself doesn't need a mezuzah because that's not communal property anymore. That is his room, and he wouldn't need. Now you have the same question. It's sad, but what happens if somebody's intermarried? They're intermarried. So now, do they need a mezuzah or not? So again, it's like partnership, especially when you have community property. By the way, these are not uncommon questions. People that are intermarried, they couldn't pass that test, but they want to keep, traditional Jews. So they want to put up a mezuzah. So the din is, if they're married and it's communal property, by the way, community property, which means the partners 50-50, so you'd have to put up all the mezuzahs without a bracha. If you own the house and it's not community property, then you'd have to put up mezuzahs on all the doors with a bracha, because it's not partnership anymore. You own the house, and you're just letting somebody sleep there. So it's your obligation to put up a mezuzah. What happens if somebody has, let's say, 3 houses, but he doesn't live at all in any of the houses except one? So some people say you don't have to put mezuzahs in the other houses, but a lot of people say that if you own the house, because you own the house, you need it as protection. So you're still obligated to put up a mezuzah even though you don't live there. I'll give you another example, which is not so uncommon. What happens if I have a doorway, but I have a bookcase blocking the doorway? I mean, I didn't nail the door shut. I didn't close the door shut. But it's not really a doorway because there's a big piece of furniture, a bookcase, whatever, blocking the door and nobody's going in and out. That doorway still needs a mezuzah because it's still a room. You just have a piece of furniture blocking it. If you nailed the door shut, mamish closed it up, then it's not a doorway anymore. Then it's a part of the wall. But if it's a doorway, even though you have things behind it, you still need a mezuzah. In fact, for those people, if you ever go to 770 upstairs, between the shul upstairs and the Merkos office, there's a double door. There's still a mezuzah there because it was never nailed shut. They just have bookcases in front of it. But anyway, I'm just saying that unless if the door is shut, you would need. Now, even a house of partners. Let's say you have a partnership of two Jews. Obviously, you need to have a mezuzah. We said if it's a partnership with non-Jews, then you need, because it's not even you put up without a bracha. What happens if the Jew owns the house and the guy is renting it? Again, if it's his own room that the non-Jew lives in, you don't need a mezuzah. But the communal property, because you own the house, not the non-Jew, you're just renting them the room. So then all the other houses would need a mezuzah. All storehouses that are used for living things. For instance, they used to have what's called eitzes, yayin, or shemen, big storehouses of wine or oil, but those are all living things, and you go in and out of them often, so that would need a mezuzah. Okay. I don't want to go into a lot of these dinim, but you have we'll learn one more din, and then we'll go to Tanya. This din, sometimes you have to be very careful. In California, there's a lot of Spanish-style houses. But let's say you go out into your backyard, so you have a little bit cemented area, and then you have a bunch of columns. Okay? Arches. Not arches. Because those arches are used as doorways in and out, you really need a mezuzah there. And each one. Let's say you have, but again, there's no door, so you're going to put up a mezuzah without a bracha. But you technically, according to halacha, you would need a mezuzah if those archways, are made to walk in and out through. It's a doorway, it's a passageway. That would need a mezuzah. If it's an archway that you can't walk through, then obviously you don't need a mezuzah. So this would be, let's say, in California. I mean, I'm sure it's in other places also. You have in your driveway, right? You have a driveway to the back. So along the driveway, there's an archway. Sometimes there's two archways. Those archways are passages. They're doorways. They're sha'arecha, gates. But because if it has a door, let's say it has a swinging gate, that archway would need a mezuzah with a bracha. If it wouldn't have a gate, so then it's a doorway without a door. So then you would put up a mezuzah without a bracha. But all these things, I'm just saying in a practical way, these are all things that people have to keep in mind. A lot of places would actually need mezuzahs, porches. There's a lot of dinim to be discussed in the dinim of mezuzah. How long do you need to live in a place to put up a mezuzah? There's a lot of dinim that the Mitzvah Shem we will learn next week, and now we will go to Tanya.